Happy holidays, everybody. I'm Charlie Teal, your host from the Call to Create podcast. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be sharing uncut, live-streamed interviews that we conducted back in October at the BendFilm Fest. We sat down with filmmakers, directors, producers, actors, and we had fascinating conversations. First up, we have Alex Creswick, the producer of The Blackout. Only the producer of the feature film, The Blackout, she also told me that she is an agent of chaos.
Oh, that's very true.
So this is going to be an interesting conversation. So we will go wherever things take us, I guess. So
can't wait.
So Alex, thank you for being here, and I'm so excited. You get to be our first live streaming guest on the show.
That's so exciting.
It's very cool.
Just set the bar for chaos. That's how I like it.
Right, so like everything will be just downhill from here, I guess. So we'll see what happens. Or uphill.
You know, if I'm an agent of chaos, let's go for both.
Yeah, or sideways, whatever. So first, I do want to start with, I want to know a little bit about the film and how it came about, and let's start there, and then we can branch out into anything that strikes your fancy.
Yeah, so The Blackout was very much a labor of love for me and my director, Daniela, who's been here. We've been enjoying the BendFilm Festival so much. We're just having a great time.
Very cool. Great.
It was, we shot it almost 3 years ago. It's a partially improvised narrative feature. So we had a script that was about 40 to 50 pages that just had the overarching story that we wanted to tell.
Okay.
And we had a few lines or suggestions, here's what we want to concentrate on this scene. Big ensemble cast. And we shot it over 12 days, so 2 weeks.
Okay.
And it was one of very rewarding, great learning experience, and something so special because our cast still talks to each other. They started this massive, we have a core of about 8 people in the movie, and they all got on a group text that, to my knowledge, is still ongoing. Which is 3 years later, they're still all texting each other, and they're still friends. And I watch them on social media, and I'm just like, oh, you guys, you still like each other, so we did something great.
Right. Yeah. Well, and wasn't that the theme of the film is human connection and in that person-to-person actual physical presence with other human beings.
Yeah, and what it is to sort of put down your phones and actually be present in the moment, because it takes place set during 2012, and the Hurricane Sandy came through New York, and everyone thought that it was just going to be, this is another rain. People said it was going to be bad, and it barely rained.
Right.
And then they realized, oh no, this is actually serious, and the blackout happens, and when the lights go out, everyone talks about how things get different when the lights go out. People start behaving a little bit differently. You have nothing to distract you when it's night. You can't really read. You can't really do anything. You have to just talk to other people.
Right.
And so it's really about not only that, but you start sort of trusting other people. So everyone in our movie has a secret. And when we sent out the scripts to the cast members, everyone got their own script with their secret in it.
Their secret, okay.
So they didn't know each other. They didn't know each other's secrets when they went through and did it. And it's such a beautiful little movie because it's nothing. I'm a development exec by trade. I'm very into story. I'm very into tight stories and doing all that. And so doing a completely improvised feature was such a difference for me. Because you can't control the story there. Right. You're sort of, as on set, I was watching it okay, so we actually need a moment here. We need a line here. We need to hit something. Or sometimes Danielle and I would sort of put our heads together, and I'd be so what if we take this hurricane metaphor and we make this character Hurricane? And so we were doing that on set. So you're writing on set, but then the actors are doing something so completely different that you don't really know what it's going to look like. So we ended up with 2 editors, and both of them had documentary experience and unscripted experience. Okay. Because no shot was the same.
Right.
No take was the same.
Right.
And it's really hard to match takes when they're not the same.
Nothing.
So it was such a good challenge that required so much collaboration between all of us. And we got something that I think is really special, and I call it a symphony. It doesn't do a 3-act structure where it kind of rises and then falls or anything. It's more of just moments over the course of the night that come together as a whole. in a very symphonic way. So
wow. Yeah. And where did the genesis of this idea come from? Like, were you or was someone on your team in New York when Sandy hit, or was that just an idea that gave you the structure to play with human connection?
That's pretty much what it was. It's a very much Danny's brainchild. It very much came from someplace deep in her. She wanted to. Danny's so good at drawing out the emotionality of people and creating these very, very real human moments between two people, and very good at just keeping them grounded and making you really sit in them and feel them without it getting too sort of overwrought.
Right.
And she's excellent at balancing that with people, and she really wanted to tell a story about human connection, about people specifically. It sort of revolves around 3 roommates primarily at the core.
Okay.
Even though it's not like one single person's story, we used Zoe, our sort of main character, as it were, as the sort of through line.
Okay.
Because you need something to anchor your story.
Right.
And this wasn't just something where it was like, okay, here's this person's story, and then we're going to go tell this person's story. She became our through line, but was very well balanced and didn't take over the movie. Okay. And then the next would be the 3 main characters, and she really wanted to tell a story about these women who had been roommates for a while and were very good friends, but like even they had secrets from each other. Even they had things that they had never told one another. And over the course of the night, each one of them admits to something that they've been like holding very close to their hearts. And it's so wonderful when you do that. And we wanted to create sort of a safe space where people were like, oh, I mean, even though you have this secret and something that's weighed on you, like we still love you.
Right.
Like
right.
Your secrets, they don't have to break you. And we're here to sort of help you carry the burdens and all of that. So yeah, it was very much Danny, and then I came in and helped her workshop the script meant, and we sort of talked about like narratively where should things go, got the script meant down, did all of the casting. We have just such a talented cast, and in the 3 years since we shot it, many of our cast members have gone on to do some really cool things. Like Hillary Ann Matthews has been on Alex Inc., and she has had a recurring role on Modern Family. Nice. Tess Paras comes from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and she's on an Amazon show where she gets to play a evil witch kind of character, and she's having such a good time doing it. Right, and so it's really nice to watch all these people grow over the course while we're waiting to edit this movie and fix it. And Danny grew an entirely new human being in the middle of post. So we've all gone through a lot of changes.
Right. So you said it was a huge cast. How many people? You said about 8, but it sounds like...
So our main cast was 8, and we told it mostly linearly. So we shot the movie almost straight through, start to finish. There were only a couple things that we had to do out of order. And at some point, we have like at least 20 people in the apartment. Right. And when you're improvising that dialogue... when we got our footage to our editor, the editor looked at it and was like, how much money did you spend on sound? And we were like, more than we probably should have for this kind of thing, except it became our saving grace because it helped us. We had 3 lavalier mics that we passed around from the cast, and that really helped us be like, okay, these are the 3 people we're doing in this take.
Right. Okay.
You get 2 takes, and then we'll switch the mics out.
Right.
And so that actually ended up helping us structure the movie a little bit. And that was not something that we knew going in. That was just kind of something we did instinctively, and our sound guy was great. And sound became a really important part of the movie, including we wanted the storm, Sandy, as she comes in, we wanted Sandy to be a character in our movie. Right. Okay. And so getting those sounds, the wind sweeping, all of that, we were talking about, we used as our touchstone Inferno, the movie Inferno, where the fire is supposed to be alive, and they actually use the roars of animals underneath it to make the fire seem like something is about to eat you. Right. So we used that, not exactly, but we were like, we want to add in sometimes, like we had some people doing like woo sounds in the background to make the storm seem a little more scary and a little more prescient. Like a person, like a voice. Absolutely. Giving it a voice, right? So it's not just a conceptual thing out in the background. So. And it was very there. And it ebbs and flows with the tide of the movie in the way that like a storm would. And sometimes when they're very high tension, the storm comes back and like rattles the wall. And there's a part where one of the characters is trying to say something like very deep and meaningful. And picture falls off the wall. Completely not something that's scripted. The picture literally just fell off the wall during the take, and she's like, oh. And then they kind of look around, and you hear this, like, laughter, and then everyone's laughing, and I was like, oh, that's the perfect way to get out of the scene. It's so good. Good job, whoever hung up the picture and didn't quite do a great job.
Stuck picture,
fantastic. And that's not something we could have done. The other really fun thing was in that same, we basically have like a 26-minute short film in the middle of the movie where each character goes around and tells their secret, and we call it the Circle of Trust scene.
Okay.
Everyone got one take.
Whoa.
So each one of those confessions, you got one shot and you did it. And there's one where one of our actors, Rob Belushi, someone's giving this like very emotive, talking about just one of the most painful experiences of her entire life. And there's this moment where everyone's sitting there and you could just tell all the actors are going like, what do we do? Like, we don't, I'm sitting there like, I don't know how you get out of this in real life, like much less in a way that makes sense on film. And then Rob sneezed. And there's just this moment, and then everyone just starts laughing, and it's this like laughter relief. And I was like, thank you, Rob, and your nose.
Wow.
We really appreciate the work you've done in this instance. And when we came to edit it, it was just so perfect, and it's such a good human moment, and it fits with his character so well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so there's a lot of little things like that you couldn't script them, and you weren't scripting them, that really, I think, lend a certain sense to the movie, like an authenticity that you couldn't, that's why we did this.
Right. And so why, like when you're at the concept stage with this film, why did you decide to go unscripted and go with such an improvised style?
So we're a low budget film. Yeah. And one of the really fun things about doing something that's under $1 million is you can take risks. Like, nobody's going to come and give us $1 to $3 million to do a partially improvised anything.
They're going to be like, so can I see the script? You'd be like, oh, there is no script.
And it's Danny's first feature, so it's not like she has this like massive body of other work. She's taking a risk on herself, and asking someone else to take a risk when you don't have that behind you it's scary for other people. So we wanted to do something that was kind of unique, that we could get away with in a way that we might not be able to even at higher budgets, because that's what you want to escalate and do cool things. So it was just something that we were like, we're not really going to get another chance to do something like this, and it's fun, and we kind of just want to see where it goes. So there's freedom in those lower budgets, even when it's hard to do because they are low budget. So there's kind of trade-offs, and I think we all really realized we did something special, and at the very least, we all came out of it like really good friends. And we had like on set our makeup artist, this wonderful woman named Marianne Yee. She had everyone doing things like onesie day. So everyone showed up in a onesie. I went out and bought a sloth onesie for this day. She did Star Wars shirt day, and even the thing is like crews tend not to get in that. Like, crews are there to work for the most part. They were still buying into all of this. They were wearing their Star Wars shirts, and it was really cool to see like bridging the hierarchical gap, as it were, between the different departments, and really like creating a community behind the camera as well as in front of it, which was really cool.
So it sounds like this is a passionate topic for you, to create community and that human connection. Like, is that was that the big draw for you? Was like, oh my God, this is a theme that you really care about?
Well, I mean, why else would you make a movie if not to connect with other people, or to show someone something that they can't access outside of this? I mean, that's why we do this, is to tell stories and to invite people into a place where they might never have gone before. So it was really important to us. Like, one of the conversations Danny and I sat down, there's a birth in the movie. And that was very important for Danny because she had just had her first child, and then, during, not that she would know it at the time, but then during post she had her second child. So she was very much like in that mode of thought, and we were talking about it. And we had like long conversations about when it was originally written, I was like, the way that this kind of goes in the script, it feels like a precipitous birth, which is when you have a baby, like you go into labor and have a baby within about 3 hours. It can be very traumatic to a woman's body. Labor gets faster the more kids you have because your body gets used to it. But we had these like great in-depth conversations about these things, like nothing that was ever going to make it into the movie, but it was always on our mind. And like that exchange of information, that sort of us talking to each other is reflected in the movie because, we had to talk to the actors and explain these things to them. And we didn't have traditional rehearsals because there's no script to rehearse. So what we did was we got the different groups of actors. Like if we knew one scene was going to be mostly our 3 roommates, we went out and we did like drunk painting night. So you go out and you paint a picture and you talk to each other and you kind of they got a feel for one another, so they knew how to play off of each other. And so we sort of did group hangouts like that, where we put people in the situations and then Danny would sort of talk to them and take them aside and talk to them about their character and all of that. So it was all communication and all talking to each other, which is what the movie's about. And that's ultimately what filmmaking really is communicating and talking to each other.
I think you were saying, when we were talking before, I think you were the one that was saying that filmmaking is the most collaborative art form that exists.
Name me another art form where you have to rely on other people in order to pull it off. Like anything else you can do individually. Right. You come straight out of your brain onto the paper. Film, you need an actor to interpret your words, a writer to write them down, a director to make the picture. You need a producer who's, off making sure everything's lined up, and like, as an agent of chaos, I'm also very good at reining the chaos back in. Like, I know when to let it run free, because that's also the thing. It's like, you never know when a picture's going to fall randomly off the wall, and then actors are going to do their acting thing, and you're like, this is great. I'm going to get all the credit for this. But like...
like, I look good right now.
Yeah,
I had nothing to do with it.
It was excellent.
Right.
It had everything to do with it. I sat there and was like, picture fall off the wall. My book and mind powers. But yeah, it's there's something to be said for like the ability to touch people, because humans, we are just stories. We're made of stories. We learn in stories. We teach in stories. We're only stories. And when you can control somebody for like somebody's attention for like 2 hours and tell them the story, that's such a powerful, influential thing, which is why people keep talking about representation on screen being so important. Because if you have a world where you only see one certain type of people and you're only seeing that when your attention is directed for 2 hours at some place, you carry that out into the real world.
Right.
And so it was really important to us as well to make sure that we had a very inclusive cast. And we did blind casting, but we told our casting directors, who were fantastic, like they helped us find just an incredibly talented group of people, that we really wanted to be cognizant of that. And we didn't write any of the roles for any specific race or anything. We just wanted to see the people who were really great, with an understanding that we were going to create a beautiful like tapestry of humanity. And in doing this improvised thing, that was so important as well, because all of the actors brought their own, point of view into that. Tess in particular, like she really wanted to work in, she's Filipino American, and her family, she's from an immigrant family, and she really put that in. Her character doesn't deal with that much, but she put that into sort of the background, and it came out in these like very specific ways as she was talking about her character, and it gives her character such depth. And same for Brandon Kyle Goodman, who's this just fabulous gay black man, and he plays, when he was doing his story, is sort of his secret and what he was talking about in that moment, he brought a lot of that experience into it. So it was really gratifying to watch all of that work that you did beforehand then pay off on screen.
Right.
Yeah.
I love what you said about that all we are is story.
There's nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean...
And they're subconscious stories that we tell ourselves. There's the conscious story we tell ourselves about ourselves. Yep. And why things happen in our lives and how things have happened in our lives.
And the way, because mostly what I'm the best at is I'm basically a script fixer. I give notes. I'm a development executive. And even like people talk about how like acting is listening, but reading is also listening. Like reading words and seeing why did you choose this specific word? Why this character? Why this person in this scenario? And you can read and learn a lot about a person based on what they've written down and how they've written it. And that's just stories. There's stories within stories. And so if you have the same story being told over and over, it's the same people doing the same things, you become stagnant, but also that you don't know that there are other stories out there. You don't accustom yourself to listen to other people's stories, and you don't listen well. If you bring your own expectations into something, are you listening to the story that's actually being told, or are you putting your own words on that story and missing certain points and certain things that people are saying?
Right. If you're not actually listening to what the other person is telling you, but you're thinking about what you're going to say, or thinking about how it affects your story, or thinking about putting your own twist on, your preconceptions of what that person may or may not be.
And the great thing about film is you can really break those down. Like, one of my favorite movies is District 9.
Yes,
that movie is incredible. It's incredible. It's like a great story, but it's also incredible because I watched that and my jaw was on the floor. And my friend was like, who I saw it with, was like, that was a really fun sci-fi movie. And I was like, I mean, fun is a word for it. Like, that was all about apartheid. And he went, what? I was like, ooh, okay,
like,
we need to have a sit down and have a quick conversation.
Right.
But one of the amazing things that movie does is visually the aliens in it. They are intentionally conceived of and drawn to be as off-putting to humans as possible. They have tiny little stalk eyes. They're called prawns for a reason. And like, shrimp are not warm, cuddly things that you want to be like, oh, there's my pet shrimp. No.
They've really not taken off in the pet market.
Right, but they intentionally did that so that you physically were repulsed, and by the end of that movie, you're on that guy's side. You're like, yes, this is not great. I am for the prawns. I don't want to call them prawns anymore. And that's the true genius of that movie, where it takes something that you are just viscerally, instinctively supposed to go, oof. And by the end of it, you're just like, I stand by you, my dude. Like, yes. And that's the power of film.
Right.
And that's incredible. That movie is entirely about your preconceived notions going in and subverting them. And it's not preachy about it or anything, but metatextually. That's 100% what that movie is. And like, that's powerful. Love that movie.
So it sounds like, clearly this is the field you would passionately pursue no matter what.
I've had these conversations with our friends because this industry it's hard. It's a lot of work. You never stop being an artist, because this is our art. No matter what aspect of it you are in, it's your art. And so when we have our low periods, because every single filmmaker struggling to like break in and do the thing, the low periods come, and sometimes most of the time, they're really, really long, and they're much longer and much deeper than sort of the high times. So you have your friends that you talk to, and the question always comes like, well, what else would you do? And we just end up sitting there staring at each other, because the answer is just like nothing, but like, because we could go do other things. Like, we could go into banking and make money and, be fine. But I mean, what else would you do?
Right.
And there's no answer to that, because it's like, well, this.
Yeah.
This is all I got.
And if you went into banking or something like that, it'd be like, at what cost? At what cost to your soul and your spirit? And
I have to stare at numbers all day, and I really don't like numbers. I can't argue with numbers. They just are. I love arguing with people. I love having conversations with people. I love points that are gray and that you can have different, because those point of views, even if I don't agree with your point of view, I still want to know what your point of view is, because it's important for me to challenge my own conceptions and notions, and like really somebody who can sit there and push back against you and be like, but what about this? And I'm like, well, I've thought about this, and here's the answer to it. Or like, wow, I actually haven't thought about that, and I need to give it more, but like, why do you, like, what about this makes you think that? And that's so important to me. And we've really, I think, lost that ability in our culture, in part because we are so polarized, but like correctly. We're in such a crisis point right now that the two sides are not equal. They're not the conversations we're having, or like people saying, yo, please don't kill me, and other people going, yeah, I think you're fine though. There's no argument there. Unlike like what was the conversation I had with a friend where we were trying to argue, at what point does red become purple? Was the conversation we were having. And I was arguing, like, there's no such thing. We've made up those completely.
Distinctions, right.
Like, that distinction is a completely human-made thing.
Right.
And he's like, no, but there is a point. And I was like, what point is it? And we got into the scientifically of, like, what wavelength are we going for that is red versus purple? But also, like, the concept of blue came up because blue is a very, very new concept. We have not had the color blue for a very long time. When you read like the Odyssey or something, they talk about the wine dark sea because they literally didn't have a word for blue. But now we do.
Right.
Blue is everywhere. We love wearing blue jeans.
Right. Yes. There you go.
But can you imagine our world without the color blue? That's like wild. But for so many generations, we lived without the color blue. That's so cool. Humans are just like, humans are wild.
I love like watching you light up about like how all of this affects.
Oh, everything is interconnected. Perception. That's the thing that you really realize is like as you go through it. I teach at UCLA, and sometimes I have trouble trying to convey certain concepts. Because I'm like, but in order to really understand this, you have to also understand this. But in order to understand this, you need to understand this. And it's like, oh, so what it really is everything is a merry-go-round, and my job is to slow the merry-go-round just long enough for you to like grab onto it and jump onto it.
Okay.
But you have to get on the merry-go-round yourself, and it's not going to slow down to like a stop.
Right.
And then once you're on the merry-go-round, it's like, have fun. It's going to be great. But it's just, yeah, everything informs everything else. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the approach I take to scripts as well.
Right.
So like you can't just throw something in there and then leave it. It needs to be a part of the world you're building. Right. You have to know and be intentional about everything that you're putting in there because you control that world. You control it completely. You're responsible for everything you show us in this world you're going to create for 1 to 2 hours. And take ownership of that.
So then to bring that back around, since you guys are creating that world in the film with so much improvisation, isn't there like a tension, a push and pull of like, okay, it sounds like you had some incredible things happen that fed into the world and made it even better. But were there things you're like, that doesn't work at all? Or, I mean, how do you...
Yeah, Danny and I had long conversations where, I mean, there were things that I advocated, like, I really don't think this works. She's like, yeah, but I really want it in there. And sometimes I would win, but it's not really winning. We would come to an agreement.
Right.
And, like, it comes down to trust and respect. Like, I knew there's a point where I don't want to argue with you anymore because it's going to turn bad. It's going to turn mean. And that's not the point. Like, none of us are arguing this to be mean. We're all arguing from a place of, we want this to be the best possible thing. And we're going to disagree sometimes, but that's fine. And it's fine that sometimes she was correct and sometimes I ended up being correct, but that's not even the right word to use. See, this is limitation of language. We don't really have a word for, I guess we just came to a consensus, and sometimes my point was the consensus point, sometimes hers was, and sometimes we found a completely separate part of it, or like a completely different thing altogether, or some weird combination of the two.
Right.
And that's also filmmaking, because as somebody who gives notes to writers, the first thing I always meet the writers before I give them notes, because I get a really good sense of who you are as a person and sort of how to talk to you, because part of my job is to facilitate that communication. And so I don't talk to the same people in the same way because it's not necessarily constructive. And so you just end up, I always tell them, you don't have to take every single note I ever give you. I'm not going to sit here and read your second draft and be like, didn't take that note. Where's that note? And like, oh, see, I did that. That's like, not the point.
I'm not your 6th grade like English teacher.
Right. But I'm very aware that I'm not always right. And that's fine. And people sometimes are very like taken aback by like, don't you want to be right all the time? Like, no, that seems real boring. Yeah. Also, that's a lot to put on me that I would really like to not be right all the time. But I always make it very clear, because you do get those development execs that they want to put their thumbprint on to be able to say, I did that. And I think if I can sit there and be like, I did that, can you tell? Then I failed you as a project.
Right.
Everything should feel cohesive, and as long as I'm coming from a place of I just want this to be the best that it possibly can, I think that comes through, and people are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. And like when you mess up or you say something that you either didn't intend or that is like unintentionally insulting to someone,
right.
if you're coming from that in every other communication you have with them, they're way more willing to both trust you, because saying, hey, I'm sorry, this hurt me, that takes a lot of trust from the person saying that.
Right.
Or, you know, you said this and it really rubbed me the wrong way. It takes a lot of trust for somebody to tell you that, and to trust you, your response is not going to be like, oh, well, that's not what I meant. Like, they know that's not what I meant, because if they thought that's what I meant, they wouldn't say it in the first place. But giving me the opportunity to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I will keep it in mind. I will try, like, what about this rubbed you the wrong way? Help me figure out how to be a better communicator with you.
Right.
I mean, that's all, when you're collaborating on something, and when we get up into the budgets of like $50 and $75 million movies, I want everyone to be able to come to me and be like, hey, so this isn't working, or I think this stunt is not set up properly and is going to actively be dangerous. There can be a hierarchy on sets where people don't feel like they can do that, or producers sometimes get the reputation of like, you're just about the money, care about the money. When we do our safety meetings, the first thing I say on every single one of my sets is, hi, I'm the producer. Your lives are not worth this movie. If there is something that you think is dangerous or wrong, you come tell me. And every single time I do it, I can see people looking at each other like, what? No one has ever said that to me before.
And yet you would think that would be the first assumption, the first position everyone should take.
You'd hope, like, yeah, I'll burn $1 million on a day if it means that somebody doesn't get their head cut off during a stunt and they get to go home to their family at night. Like, that's a trade-off that I'm willing to make.
Right.
But that's not necessarily the prevalent feeling of everybody in the industry.
Right.
But there are a lot of people right now who are fighting against that and trying to make that the sort of accepted thing.
Right.
And we've all kind of collectively are taking these like very big steps within the industry to make it a safer, more collaborative place where everyone can sort of thrive, and, you know, our stunt people are as protected as we can make them.
And so now that you guys have this feature out there in the world, is there plan? It sounds like, I mean, this was 3 years in the editing. It was 3 years ago that you said you made this?
Yeah, we shot it in 2017, like right at the end of January, beginning of February in 2017.
And all of these people still stay in touch and they're still connected.
I know, it's
like,
so cool.
I'm sure you guys have talked about like, okay, what's our next project? What are we going to do next?
Yeah, Danny and I are actually working on a project together. She wrote this just absolutely gorgeous script that's very much based in her own real life, where she grew up with a mother who had a mental illness. Okay. And it's just this, I read the script much like when I read this, and I was like, oh, this is never something I've never seen before, because, you know, it's improvised. Of course it's something you've never seen before. It's a movie about this woman who, it shows her at like 7, 8, as a teenager, and then as a 20-something, 30-something adult. And the mother stays the same. And you see how young, the main character's name is Bowie, young Bowie thinks her mom is like, you'll come on the pirate ship with me? Fantastic. And then teenage Bowie is like, I need you to be a mother. I need you to be a parent. Like, I don't need the friend to go on the wild rumpus with me. Right. And she's very like that teenage anger where you're asking for boundaries even though you say you don't want them. Right. And then as an adult who's dealing with the fact that like you deeply love your mother, but she wasn't necessarily the mother that you wanted or needed all the time. Right. And how as an adult do you deal with that? And it's just the interweaving of those 3 time periods. And watching it, it's just, Danny balances it so beautifully in a way where every person that I've sent it to for either coverage or like financing has read it and been like, who's directing this? I was like, the writer. And they're go, okay, good. Because you really read it and you're like, the person who wrote this has to direct it, because it's so it's so clearly steeped in her own personal lived experiences.
And I have to think is that unusual still, that the writer is also works or acts as the director as well, or is that more common than
it's getting more common in the film industry, in part because it can be honestly, in getting movies set up and financed and made, I find the directors are actually the hardest people to attach, because once you have a director, this is secrets of filmmaking 101. If you can get two creatives in the room together to talk to each other, the likelihood of them walking out of the room wanting to work with each other is like 99%.
Okay.
So if you have that one creative, if you have your director,
and you're trying to get that second.
Yep. I'll just be like, hey, so you read this and you really like it for your actor. Yeah, but just let them sit in the room with Danny. Right. Let them sit in the room with the director. And then I'm just sitting there like, 1, 2, there they go. And they're like, oh, we're best friends. We want to work together. This is great. I'm like, yes, okay.
You're like, good. And the magic has happened, right?
Haha, I have done the thing.
Is there a constructive agent of chaos as well?
Yes. Well, I like to, when I teach at UCLA, I really enjoy having the like new minds that I get to warp. I'm like, yes, I'm a very good manipulator. And watching them be like, oh, that's a bad word. I'm like, it can be. But we're manipulating people's assumptions all the time, from the clothes we wear to the way we do our hair. Yes. I'm manipulating your first view and assumptions about me. And so manipulation doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like, obviously, if you're doing it for bad intents, or you're really doing it, in a very non-consensual way. But like, again, I talk to people, writers, differently based on how I've met them. And that is in its own way a manipulation, but it's not to any like bad effect. So this is where I go and like nerd out about words and how we tend to attach good, bad sort of values to them, which not necessarily true. And like language, it's very fun. I like it much better than numbers.
It's fun. I see moments in this conversation when it's like I can see that light like spark in your eyes. You're like, this is the thing I get a kick out of talking
I love
about.
It. Yeah.
But you're right, like manipulation, every interaction between two human beings involves some form of manipulation of perception, or
based on the language we use, how we talk to each other, even like your body. Like, you can angle your body to invite more or get away, and that's some people respond very stringently to body language, where if you like turn away from them, they'll just shut down.
Right.
And if you know that, you can then manipulate that sort of idea. So it's, the manipulation doesn't have to be a bad word, but generally speaking, if we're pulling it out, somebody's done something not great.
Right.
So, language, limiting, and just the world is our oyster with it.
And does that tie into the film you were just describing of like the 3 stages of this woman's growth, and how, the manipulation between her and her mother, or is that aside? Is that not tied?
No, that's more of a trying to show the whole of a person almost, because in order to understand someone like truly, you have to understand where they came from, what they've been through, kind of a deal. And so this is showing, your bipolar mother is super fun when you're 7 and 8, and like she'll go and she'll be like, you know what, let's not do a pirate ship, let's build a rocket ship, kind of a deal. And as you're a kid, you're like, this is fantastic, like this is really fun. But that kind of an attitude doesn't necessarily carry over when you're a teenager. Like, you need different things, and if you can't get that from them, if you're, I feel like I'm putting more words into this because the script is its own sort of thing, but then there's the meta text of sort of what we're talking about. That has more to do with, how the people in your life shape you. And the things like you carry trauma that you didn't know, because even when you're 7 and 8, you're kind of aware that like my mom isn't like other moms. I don't really know what to do with that when you're 7 and 8. You don't have the context, the greater world context to really completely understand it. But when you start getting into a teenager, you start understanding more.
Right.
You start realizing like, my mom's not like other moms, and it might not be a good thing. And see, even here, I'm thinking my language, and I'm like, oh, see, I'm putting a lot on moms when we're talking about this, because we're talking about this in the scripts, but that's parents. Like, what I mean is parents, or your guardian, or whoever.
Family,
your family. Like, we're all products of our family. Right. And we all love our families, but every single person I know has issues with their family of some kind, because people who are that deep into you, who have that much to do with who you become as a person, they're going to be the people who have affected us the most. And that's kind of what this is a meditation on, because, again, I feel like I'm speaking for Danny, but she loves her mother so much. And you really feel that in the script too. You feel the love, but you also feel kind of the frustration and what it's like dealing with someone's mental illness. That's hard. It's a really hard thing. And we collectively as a culture have not been great about giving people the tools to do that, to not only deal with it for themselves, but to also have the support to deal with it in someone that you do deeply love. So that's kind of, all of that is rolled into the script. It's all part of the conversation. And like, how do you reconcile with someone like when they have hurt you so deeply and you love them so deeply, and man, that's just a potentially explosive combination. And like, everyone should go to therapy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I've learned that.
The world needs therapy. We all collectively need world therapy. We need individual therapy.
Like, we should all be assigned a therapist at some point in life.
I mean, I can't imagine trying to do anything in the film industry without a therapist, because it is, again, we're going back to, it's our art. We're never not doing things that are in service of that art. We don't watch TV to turn our brains off. We watch TV and I'm like, oh, this is TV. Like, this is something that I can do. I watch TV completely different than anyone in my family. I occasionally they'll do something and I'll be like, man, that VFX was bad. And my mom's like, what VFX? And I'm like, Mom, they're in a car behind a green screen. And they didn't even bother to like make the lighting match. And I was like, oh, I don't see that. And I went, okay.
Does your family not like to watch TV with you?
Oh, they actually, they find it very amusing, especially because like I tend to sort of play up and be very dramatic when I'm talking about things. I try to entertain them while also teaching. Is sort of how I like to approach things. Like, I like to make it fun even while I'm explaining concepts that they might be so dry. But if I can make a joke about it, or if I can phrase something in a way that you completely don't expect, it's amusing for me to watch your reaction, and then also amusing for the people who are reacting. And I feel like the students tend to retain a little bit more information in that way. So I just, the world has enough drama in it. I can at least bring some comedy.
But so you don't have any friends or family that, like, if you go to the movies with them, they're like, you're not allowed to give any commentary through the film. Like, just let me watch the damn movie and enjoy it.
No, I try and be judicious in the things. Like, I have a bar. The stuff below the bar, I just think in my head, and I'm like, or I'll sit there if it's really bad. Man, there was one. I walked out of my first movie since high school 2 years ago. And before that, I had a jacket with me, and we happened to be sitting almost in the back, and it was so bad that I put my jacket over my head and pulled out my phone, and I literally went like this, and I just started texting people like, I cannot believe this.
Like, this is the worst.
Can I describe this shot to you? And so the friend that I went to that with, I leaned over within 60 seconds of the first shot. I leaned over and went, I don't think I like this movie. And he goes, what? And then he started looking at it. 2 minutes later, he goes, oh, I don't think I like this movie either. And I was like, yeah, like, I know.
See? I told you.
So he got up and he went to the restroom, and I was sitting there, and this shot happened that just made me so deeply furious because it was a pointless shot. It was an incredibly expensive shot. So the producer in me is like, I think you just spent at least $1 million doing the shot. And it was a shot that pulled out of a window and then went all the way down a series of windows. And then it went, and it did a bird's eye view of what should have been a murder scene, except you don't see the bird's eye view of the murder scene. What is the point of that shot? All I saw was the top of some balding white dude's head. And I was just sitting there like, oh, I can't do this anymore. So I walked out of the theater, and my friend comes out of the bathroom, and he sees me, and he goes, oh, thank Christ, I thought I was going to have to go back in there. And I was like, nope, we are going to go to the bar. We're going to get a pizza. I'm going to get a cider. And I'm going to be really, really mad that this movie exists. And as we swung by, he just stopped by to the staff, and he was like, do you think we can get our money back? And the staff looked at him and went, what? And he was like, it was just so bad. And it's not that I want my money back necessarily. It's that I don't want this movie to have my money. That's how much we both really liked it. And he's not in the film industry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Also, my friends all know that depending on how bad a movie is, what happens is I'll sit there and then I'll slowly start going like this and sinking down.
Sinking down. Right.
And so the lower I go, the worse it is. And one of my friends took me to a free screening of Transformers, which... It's egregious. They didn't call it trans 4 with a 4 in the middle.
With a 4,
MERS.
right.
Like,
just to make this...
That was my first sign that this movie was not going to be great. But at one point I was watching and my eyes were barely over the seat and my friend looks at me and he goes, is our friendship going to survive this? And I looked at him and went, I will never forgive you for taking me to this movie. And to this day, occasionally he'll say something and I'll just look at him and be like, you made me go see Transformers. And he's like, I didn't. I invited you to a free screening and you went of your own free will. And I was like, nope, you're responsible.
Right. You're like, our friendship survived, but you can never pick movies ever again.
Yeah, I think I lost it. Transformers is actually a very fun franchise for the most part. The comics are great. The Transformer comics are like legitimately phenomenal storytelling. They're doing such interesting work in them. I'm like floored. And I actually enjoyed Bumblebee for the most part. I think that they've sort of course corrected. They went far too into the spectacle of it.
Right.
But the point where I got truly angry at the movie was they used the exact same VFX shot 3 times in a row. It's this white boat, like a big yacht that gets lifted up in this swirling miasma of Transformer and Decepticon, whatever. And I was like, no, you don't get to sell me on a spectacle and then cheat me by using the exact same shot multiple times. Like, no, that's not why I was paying you money. Guys, come on. You can't do that. That's cheating. Right. So I felt very fundamentally betrayed by the cheating of the VFX. Yeah.
So you sounds like you're already working on this amazing next project. Mm-hmm. What other things are exciting you in the industry or in your life, or like projects you're working on? Like what's got you fired up about whatever's coming next, in addition to not just that film, but...
So most of my experience on paper has been in film. So people, if you just looked at my resume or just the things I've done, you're like, oh, she's a film development producer. But I actually love TV. I deeply love TV. I've developed several TV shows. One of them got bought very recently. So hopefully they had, like, the company that bought it, I developed it for another producer. They sold it to this company who has an overall deal. So I'm really hoping that it goes for it because it's a great idea that I'm like vague booking in real life right now because I can't go into details of it. But the potential of the stories that we're being allowed to tell on TV, because I love both film and TV. Okay. Film, you can tell a story that has a beginning, middle, and end. It's just very tight and contained, and there's like so much value in that storytelling. Okay. TV, you can get deeper, you can get darker, you can really peel back the layers of a character in a way that you can't necessarily do in a feature film, because the feature film, you have up to 2 hours and that's it. Right. TV, you've got potentially hours and hours and hours. Right. So there's a lot of TV that I'm really enjoying. And TV tends to move a little faster than films do, in part because films take, up to 2, 3, 4 years after you shoot them. Right. Okay. So film tends to move just a little bit slower, culturally speaking, than TV does. So you have stuff like, I've been watching This Close, which is on the Sundance Channel. It's Joshua Feldman and Shoshana Stern, who are both deaf actors. Oh, wow. And it's a comedy, but it has, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, they're all so messed up in ways that I deeply, deeply relate to. And it's great because they're signing through it. It's a combination. So you see the signing, you see just representation again of people who are often cut out of the visuals and stuff like that. But it's so relatable at the same time, because I'm like, oh, yep, this is my friend. My friend did this. My friend broke up with their boyfriend, and then they got back together because he proposed to her. And I was sitting there like, guys, please don't do this. This is like, at least date again. And that's one of the, it's great. You you have such good content coming out. And with that, you're also getting this like beautiful boom in comics. And so there's some really just phenomenal and fun comics. I don't really read superhero comics for the most part, unless it's something like I read Sun, which is the Superman story if Superman landed in Russia. And the conversation is really, it's a sort of nature versus nurture kind of a thing.
Right.
But I read stuff like The Unwritten, which is kind of a meditation on Gestalt theory and like, if enough people believe something, can it be? Is it true?
Is it true? Right.
What's the nature of truth? Like, what does that mean? Bitch Planet is
which
so
you mentioned
good.
before.
It's so good.
Which I'm definitely, I've got to check that out.
It's a lesbian blaxploitation, woman in prison, 50s sci-fi movie in comic book form through like an incredibly intersectional feminist lens, and I really love it. So much fun stuff out there. We're like in a real golden age of content creation and accessibility. Like I think honestly, one of the best shows of the last year was Doom Patrol, which was on DCU.
Okay.
It's excellent. It's such good writing. It's so fun. It's one of the best comic book TV shows I've ever seen.
Wow.
And like,
what's
because
it called?
it's Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol, okay.
And it's actually, so anybody who either liked Umbrella Academy or watched Umbrella Academy and went, man, this is almost good.
Yes.
Doom Patrol is what you want.
Okay.
Because it's
then I need
both
to watch
of them.
that show.
Both of them were written by Gerard Way. The comic book resurgences of both of those things were written by Gerard Way, and so they have a very similar ethos to them. But Doom Patrol is just, it's so much better than Umbrella Academy. Like without casting aspersions on anyone who likes it or doesn't like it or whatever. It's just the writing on it is great. Brendan Fraser's in it, and he's having the time of his life. Like, he's having such a good time in it. It's great. It's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I love hearing like all the variety of stuff that you're like, you get turned on by and excited by.
Oh yeah, I'm a voracious consumer of pop culture and stuff like that. Like, I just eat it up literally, and then I'm like, hey, please let me tell everyone about all of the good stuff that's out there, because it can be very hard to kind of get through. There's so much out there that it can be hard to find that stuff that really sparkles and shines. Right. So yeah.
Wow. I think we've hit a good stopping point, and now we've got an audience here for film
this is very intimidating.
So I guess we can wrap it up there. Alex, thank you so much.
Yes, this was
awesome.
so fun. I feel like we just kind of continued our conversation from last night. Where
exactly.
I got all of your tattoos, and I felt like very...
talk more about tattoos and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, well...
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to our first live stream here on The Call to Create. And now we'll back to the BendFilm screening. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us. The Call to Create with host Charlie Teal is presented by Ghost Village Films and captured at Open Space Event Studio in Bend, Oregon. Subscribe and follow on YouTube, iTunes, and thecalltocreate.com.